Hey everyone, a warm welcome to my video presentation. And today we'll be talking on the topic of SLA management in the cloud computing from the course of the cloud and beyond. This topic this talks about how a business operates in the cloud. So over I guess next 10 minutes, we'll walk through what SLA actually is about, why there are two-way relationship, and how to evaluate cloud agreements, what goes inside an SLA, and the real challenges organizations face when working with them. So let's jump right into the slides. So this slides talks about the SLA for the cloud computing. So, what exactly is a service level agreement, or it also stands for SLA? It is a core, and SLA is a formal, legally binding contract between a cloud server provider and their customer. It sets out exactly what level of a service the customer should expect and what happens if the standard isn't met. Think of it like a guarantee. For example, Amazon Web Service promises a 99.99% uptime for the EC2 compute service. If they fall below that, customer get a credit refund. Isn't that interesting? And well, it is interesting. So that promise is that SLA in an action. That promise is a SLA in action. And SLA typically covers three characteristics. First, it's documented. It has to be a written, officially exchanged agreement, nothing vague or verbal. Second, it's a bilateral, meaning it applies on the both sides. The provider has obligation, but so does the customer. And third, it must be measurable. Every metric in the SLA needs to be something you can actually track, monitor, and report on. If you can't measure it, you can't enforce it. Some specific things an SLA will be typically defined include viability, often expressed as a percentage like 99.9%, as well as a reliability, scalability, responses time, and penalties for any breaches. So moving on to the next slide, we'll be talking about an SLA is not a one-way solution. Now, here's a misconception I want to address. A lot of people think an SLA is just something that provider hands to a customer and say, sign here. That's wrong. An SLA is not a one-way solution. Well, it's as you can see in the slides, the relationship between the cloud provider and the cloud customer flows in a both direction. The provider has obligation flowing to a customer like uptime guarantees and supports responsive time, but the customer also has a responsibilities flowing back, like providing a site access, maintaining a hardware on their end, and respecting acceptable use policy. The three key points here is first, shared expectation. Both parties may interrupt contract terms very differently. Rushing the negotiation process doesn't give either side enough time to really understand what they agreed to. Second, mutual accountability. The customer isn't just a passive recipient of a service. They have to hold up their end, organizing physical and logic access, making sure that their own infrastructure is maintained. And third is collaborative of formulation. Neither side should be imposed decision on the other. The SLA needs to be negotiated together with the both parties agreeing on what performance metric looks like. And further from the further slide, we'll be talking about the steps to evaluate a cloud service agreement. So, what do you think? How do you actually go about evaluating a cloud service agreement before you sign? Well, there are the 10 structured steps. So let's go through the first five and we'll be talking about the next five on the next slides. And talking about the step one, the step first, is to understanding the roles and responsibility. You need to be crystal clear on who is accountable for what. Step 2 is evaluating businesses level policies. Does this agreement align with the company's own governance rule and compliance requirements? Step 3 is to understand the service and deployment model, like is this a IaaS or SaaS or a PaaS? It is a public or the private cloud. So you need to know what this deployment model is all about. Step 4 is identifying the critical performance objective, like what's KPI matter to your business. Uptime percentage, latency, throughput. And step 5 is evaluating security and privacy requirements. This is not non-negotiable for most organizations. Data encryption, access control, and regulatory compliance like GDPR and HIPAA needs to be explicitly covered. Moving to the next slide, uh, we'll be talking about the rest of the 5 steps that are from 6 to 10. And the step 6 talks about it's identifying the service requirements, like how will the service be monitored, report on the charge over time. So step 7 is preparing for a service failure management. Like what's the escalation path when someone breaks? Like what's the other way or the alternative way if the service fails? So like how quickly do you providers needs response? And step eight is understanding the disaster recovery plan. What are the recovery time and recovery point objectives? Where is the backup data stored? So as I already said, step 8 talks about it. Step 9 is defining a governance process, who review the SLA compliance on the ongoing basis on how often. The step 10 is understanding the exit process. This one often goes overlooked. You need to know how you get your data back, what portability looks like, and what happens at a contract termination before you sign. So these are the steps that we talked, like from the last 2 slides. And moving to the next slides, yes, Alice, we'll be talking about yes, Alice substances, the 8 core elements. Now let's look over what actually inside an SLA and why we call a SLA substances. Every world formed SLA should contain 8 core elements, and you can see them displayed here. These are the description of the service, performance supervision, problem administration, consumer responsibilities, license and cures, reservation, which covers data security, catastrophe, recovery, and finally a service termination. Think of these 8 elements as a skeleton of any cloud contract. Without all of them, the agreement has gaps that can lead to the dispute downtime. Moving to the next slide, we'll be talking about the key details of the SLA substances. So let me zoom into the 4 of our important elements. The description of a service is most critical section. It precisely defines what is being delivered, separate standard from the customer service, and eliminates any ambiguity. Performance supervision means every service must be measurable. The metrics, standards, and inspection methods all should be written in the contract and reviewed consistently. Problem administration is about minimizing disruption. There, there needs to be clear process for handling unexpected incident. Recovery covers catastrophe. Recovery covers security and business continuity. Consumer must provide the right access and provider must have a credible plan to recover service if something catastrophic happens, like a data center outage. Moving to the next slide, we'll talk about the SLA challenges, like what are the challenges that can that SLA faces. So first is that much of a cloud infrastructure, especially the network, site outside, the direct control of either the provider or the customer. The second is a multi-tenancy complexity. Third is growing a SaaS provider often can't afford to offer well-defined SLAs. Every new customer they add increase the load on their shared data center. Fourth is the core cost value guarantee trade-off. Tighter SLAs cost provider more to deliver. And weaker SLAs can be a warning sign about the maturity of the accountability of the provider. And fifth is there is no universal standard for the SLA terminology. And finally, time pressure. Rushing to a silent negotiation is a recipe for the problems both parties need time to read and understand. Moving to the next slide, we'll be talking about the SLA benefits versus potential barrier. They so Let's talk about those challenges well implemented as well as offer significant benefits. They create a strong shared understanding of a service expectation between both parties. They encourage transparency and accountability, but there is a potential barrier too. Resources may not be always be available when needed. Management might not fully committed to agreed timelines, and if SLE development process isn't treated as a team effort, with people's recommendation generally heard, it becomes very hard to maintain our commitment to the process. So to wrap up, the five key takeaways I like to share is one, an SLA is a formal measurable contact defining a service quality between a cloud. Two, SLAs are bilateral, meaning both sides have an obligation. Three, evaluating any cloud agreement across all 10 structure steps. Four, SLA, eight SLA substances from a backbone of any cloud contract. And five, challenges are real multi-tenancy infrastructure limits and so on. So this is all we talk about the slides, and thank you for your time and listening to my video presentation, and I'm very much happy to take any question in the comment section down below, and make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get notified for my next video, and stay tuned, we'll be meeting on the next video, and thank you very much for your time.